It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha! Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening, everyone. Brouhaha time. Tuesday night, WABO, Waynesboro, Wayne County, Mississippi. Marshall Wood and Dale McKee. Good afternoon, Dale. How you like my raspy voice? How you like that?
I love it. I mean, it makes you sound important.
It does? Mm-hmm. Does that sound like I'm making an offer you can't refuse?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm liable to. You better watch out.
Yeah, you sound like somebody from upstate New York.
Oh, man. How are you, Dale? I've been better myself.
Yeah, well, I've probably been better too. So
a couple of wore out kind of fellas.
Yeah, we getting that.
We can still talk, though, can't we?
Well, yeah, that's our problem.
You know, my mama said something. I love my mama. My mama's not with us anymore. She's been gone a long time. But anyway, she had a saying one time. It kind of reminded me of the Wendy's commercial. So she altered it a little bit. She said, "Help, I started talking and I can't shut up." I found myself guilty of the very same thing. How about you, Dale?
Well, you know, you get to talk a lot. You know, on the high school football games, you know, I hear you more than who's your co-partner up there. You need to let him talk more.
Oh no, he don't know. He wouldn't be with me if he knew what he was doing. He's like you. You're like a couple of idiots. But you know what they say? Takes one to know one. Just kidding, Kenny. You're all right. Oh well, Archie Cooley, the gunslinger, we lost him.
He was something else, wasn't he?
He was a good one. Now, where was he from? I mean, I ran across him when he hit MVSU with Willie Totten and Jerry Rice. Mm-hmm. You know, man, what a duo we had up there with those two. Mm-hmm. And but wasn't he from down in this neck of the woods?
Well, he was. From what I've read about him, he was born in around Sumrall.
Okay.
But he grew up in Laurel and went to Oak Park High School, and you know, there's been a lot of Bostons and Cooleys and people like that finished from Oak Park over the years, and you know, they still have Cooleys running around up there at the football field.
And this is Oak Park in Laurel.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Was that the school? What was their mascot? Was that the Dragons?
That was the Dragons.
You know, we have played Laurel a couple of times over there, and they've worn the Dragon uniforms.
Mm-hmm, the blue ones.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Now we've put it all together.
And he was quite a player, and he went on, just telling a little something about him, he went on and was an all-conference player up at Jackson State, and then he went in the military for a little bit, and he was a heck of a semi-pro baseball player, too.
He's just a great athlete, wasn't he?
Yeah, he used to manage and play for the Laurel Black Cats, if you've ever heard of them. And he also started his coaching career at Heidelberg. And he made his fame, honestly, on the girls' basketball. They won 77 straight one time.
It might have been you, or it might have been Charlie Britton told me about his overall record. Do you know what his overall record was?
Well, it was like 170-something and 9.
Yeah. That's pretty good, ain't it?
Yeah, it ain't bad.
Ain't bad. Well, rest in peace, Archie. We appreciate all you've done for sports in the great state of Mississippi and beyond.
But he stayed at Heidelberg like 7 years, and then he got a job at, I want to say his first job was at Alcorn. He finished from Jackson State.
And then
And then he coached at Alcorn, and then he got the job at Valley.
Yeah.
And he never coached at Jackson State, you know. I mean, he was always in between. So, but anyway, he brought a lot of attention to Mississippi. His team in 1984 averaged 61 points a game.
Lighten it up.
And I read a column that Rick Cleveland wrote last week and said that the NCAA called Mississippi Valley and said, "We don't believe these stats that you're sending us each week." And he said, "Let me send you the game tapes and you tell me." He sent him the game tapes and never heard a word out of it.
That'll shut him up. Baseball at the big, the big three, they kind of turning their fortunes around a little bit, maybe? It seemed like early on all three of them were struggling a little bit. What's up with that, Dale?
Well, I think State rebounded from their tough series loss to Ole Miss and won 3 straight against Auburn.
Yeah.
And Southern Miss and State's got a favorable schedule going down the stretch in these last 4 series that they have.
Yeah.
So, they might come out with, pretty good. They might come out with a winning SEC record.
Well, you got them right now with 26 wins. Southern's got 25 wins. Ole Miss 21. So they're pretty close, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Any of these guys going to make the tournament, you think?
Well, I think Southern and State would have a better chance than Ole Miss right now because Ole Miss's conference record is upside down. They're 6-12 in the SEC, where State's 10-8.
Didn't Bianco reach a milestone?
He did. He won his 1,000th game.
How unique is that in college baseball, Dale?
Well, they said he is one of only 98 that's ever coached.
That's pretty unique.
Yeah, there's been a lot of baseball coaches.
98 sounds like a lot, but I'm telling you what, there's been a lot of baseball coaches, D1 baseball coaches through the years.
Yeah.
There's a lot of programs. I think we looked at one time how many. Who we got as our guest tonight?
We got Benjamin Rosenberg. He's from the Columbus Dispatch up in Columbus, right next to Starkville, and he covers Mississippi State.
Awesome.
And he's going to talk to us about the Bulldogs. They're going to talk about the spring training game, maybe a little baseball,
all right,
maybe a little anything else.
All things Mississippi State.
Yes, sir.
Sounds like a winner, Dale. You always do. Let's take a break here from our sponsor, and Dale and I'll be back with tonight's guest, Benjamin Rosenberg, right after this commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome to the show, Benjamin. Benjamin, how's everything in the Columbus area today?
Things are good. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. Benjamin, tell us a little bit about your background, because I don't think you're from Mississippi. I don't think you grew up in Mississippi. Am I correct on that?
No, I did not. I've only moved here right at the start of the last football season, so about 7-8 months ago at this point. I was born in Chicago, lived outside of there for my first 10 years or so. Then my family actually moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area. So my parents still live out there. That's where I went to high school and everything. Back to the Chicago area to attend college at the journalism school at Northwestern, which was a really good place to grow and learn. My first post-grad job was actually up in New Hampshire and Vermont, covering high schools and Dartmouth College up there for a little under 2 years. And now I'm here covering Mississippi State and the SEC. So I've kind of been all over the place.
Well, you went. You're on the big stage when you arrive at the SEC. I don't care if you're a coach, a player, or a sports writer these days, as our TV announcer. You seem like that the SEC is kind of the place that you'd like to be, you know. And of course, you know, I know there's other conferences like the Big Ten and things like that. So just tell us. I know you're a Northwestern fan. What team did you pull for when you were growing up college football?
Yeah, I mean, Northwestern also kind of was the closest I had to a true college team growing up. I went to a lot of games at Stanford after I moved out to the Bay Area. But, I mean, neither of my parents went to a school for undergrad that had big-time college sports. They both went to D3 schools, but they did meet at Northwestern for law school. So I sort of rooted for their teams, but obviously not anywhere near to the level I did after I actually went there.
So did you do a lot of student newspaper work there, or did you work in sports information at Northwestern?
Yes, I covered a lot of the teams there for the Daily Northwestern, for the student newspaper. Did a good amount of football, good amount of basketball. Softball was the one I probably spent the most time with. That really became my niche, and it was a program that has had quite a bit of success over the last few years, so that's been a lot of fun. But yeah, it was great being around the Big Ten there, and it's great being around the SEC now. Well,
that's great. Well, listen, we know you do a lot sports writing here for the Columbus paper, and you may have some other places that you share information too, but tell us about what your thoughts on the Mississippi State spring football game were.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to glean that much, just because it is really a glorified practice and a chance for fans to, get their football fix in April. But I mean, this new look offense, they really showed that they can do some things. Blake Shapen, obviously the quarterback that they brought in out of the transfer portal from Baylor, he completed 18 out of 22 passes for more than 300 yards and 3 touchdowns that he just played in the first half. And the receiving room looks a lot different. I mean, last year you had players like Tulu Griffin, Vivian Thomas, Justin Robinson. All of them are either getting ready for the NFL draft or has transferred to other schools or are currently in the portal. But they've really retooled that group very quickly. They brought in Kevin Coleman from Louisville and Kelly Akari from Texas El Paso. They both looked like they can, they've got some big play potential and can be explosive, make plays down the field. The freshmen that they're really excited about, they got 3 of them, Mario Craver, J.J. Harrell, and Braylon Burnside, who's from right here in Starkville. And then some of the returners there, too, in that game. Creed Whittemore didn't play in the spring game. He's dealing with a little bit of an injury, but he should be fine come the fall. Jordan Mosley, Jaden Wally. So the receiving room is quite deep, and they can throw to the tight ends, get them involved as well. They got some new guys in that room, a couple brothers who transferred in, Justin and Cameron Ball, and Seydou Traore, who's originally from London, played at Arkansas State and then was at Colorado, but had to sit out last year after coming to Mississippi State. But they're definitely going to get the tight ends the ball, which they really didn't do much at all in the last offense last year with Zach Arnett as head coach and Kevin Barbe as the offensive coordinator.
What about Mississippi State's always been known for their defensive line and also for their defense in general, because they've just always been big and physical in the past. I was reading something about Brandon Jennings, a linebacker, Hines Community College transfer. They said that he had an outstanding spring game. Is anybody else besides Brandon?
Yeah, no, he looked good for sure. The defense as a whole is a work in progress, really at all 3 levels. Up front, you've got guys like DeMonte Russell, Deontay Anderson, Trevion Williams working his way back from an injury. The secondary is probably like the area with the biggest question marks, especially based on some of what we saw on Saturday against those receivers. At linebacker, Jennings definitely had a real solid game. Stone Blanton is a guy they brought in from South Carolina. He's from Mississippi and was actually originally committed to Mississippi State to play baseball, and then ended up choosing football and heading over to South Carolina, where he was one of their top linebackers last year as a sophomore, and now he's back in his home state. So, I mean, they might end up adding 1 or 2 more guys later on this month while the portal's still open. Jeff Levy, new head coach, said that he wanted a new corner, maybe a new edge rusher. So we'll see what he's able to do with that.
Well, listen, could you tell, was there a little more excitement, especially in the fan base or the players, based on how they kind of that the team did last year and coming into this year? Is is there a different feeling up there this year? Do you think they could have a little better record than they did last year?
Yeah, I mean, they could. I mean, this was my first year covering the spring portion and the spring game, but we definitely heard from several of the players who we've talked to, not just after the spring game, but throughout the last few weeks of spring practice. They've talked about the energy around the program and being much higher than it's been in the past. And they've obviously had a lot of coaching changes in recent years with the death of Mike Leach and then the firing of Zach Arnett, Greg Knox coming in and being in the interim role for a couple of weeks, now the hiring of Jeff Levy. So, I mean, certainly the offense is going to be more explosive, and I don't think the play clock is going to be much of a factor. They want to go with a lot of tempo and move pretty quickly. Not a lot of huddling will be going on. The non-conference games, if we're looking ahead to the schedule all seem pretty manageable. And, I mean, the goal definitely for the first year is going to be 6 wins and getting back into a bowl game after they missed out on that last year. And you look at teams like Florida and Arkansas, who they play at home, and if they can win all their non-conference games and beat those two, for example, then you're right there. So obviously it's all a long way out, but certainly a more confident group right now. But that's probably the case for every team in the spring.
All right, let's shift our our topic to baseball a little bit. Bulldogs came off a big sweep over Auburn that they needed to have after, it was kind of a rebound game for them after their losing the series up at Oxford the week before. So did the Bulldogs, they didn't score a whole lot of runs, but they just seemed to beat Auburn in the end.
Yeah, they beat them with pitching, which is the big surprise for a couple reasons. Number one, they didn't score a ton of runs against an Auburn pitching staff that's among the worst in the SEC. And in fact, they only hit one home run the entire series against a team that allows more home runs than anybody else in the conference. However, the flip side of that, and what's really encouraging, is the pitching staff really went out there and threw the ball well, and that's the starters, that's the relievers. We saw Cal Steven. He's developing into a true Friday night guy. There were 7 very strong innings in the Friday night game. You got Durangelo Sanger, the ambidextrous pitcher, of course. He threw the ball really well in the first game of the doubleheader yesterday. And then with Nate Dohm still out with that injury, they had to go with the bullpen game for the last one. And you had Brooks Auger throw well in the start for the first few innings. Guys like Cam Stilkey, Nolan Stevens come in. And then the guy who really stood out is Tyson Harden, who might just be turning into the closer for this team. Last year, the numbers for most of their pitchers last year were really bad. But for him, they were quite unsightly. His ERA was over 12. In conference play, it was over 21. Not a huge sample size, but still. This year, he hasn't allowed a run in his last 10 appearances. It's covered 15 2/3 innings. He came in and got the save in the first game of the doubleheader and then pitched the last couple innings to get the win in the second game when they came back to tie the game in the 7th and then walk it off in the 8th because with the doubleheader, they were only playing 7-inning games.
So what's the prospects look in the next 4 series for the Bulldogs? Or do you think they'll be favored in any of those final 4 series as they play?
They should be favored in the 2 that are at home. They play Alabama and Missouri at home down the stretch in May. They should be able to take 2 out of 3 at least from each of them. The 2 road series are coming up. They're definitely going to be major challenges. That's this weekend at Vanderbilt, and then a couple weeks after that, they'll go to Arkansas. Both very strong teams, and it'll be tough to take even one game, let alone 2. They've lost 2 out of 3 in all 3 of the road series they've played in conference play so far. That's been against Texas A&M, Florida, and then Ole Miss. But they've won all 3 series at home, Auburn, and before that LSU and Georgia. So as long as they can continue to protect their home field, 6-6 the rest of the way feels very in play in conference play. That leaves them at 16-14 overall, which should definitely put them into the NCAA tournament for the first time since the 2021 national championship team. And I don't know, we're probably not talking about hosting because the RPI still isn't great, but even so that represents major progress over the last couple of years for Chris Lemonis in this program.
Well, listen, I know that Chicago is a great baseball town because you've got the beloved Cubs and the White Sox. But covering college baseball, how different is it from the SEC than the Big Ten? Is there much difference?
Honestly, it's night and day. And I say that I really didn't cover a lot of baseball at Northwestern, mainly because it just wasn't prioritized. There are some Big Ten programs that have had a good deal of success. You've got Indiana, you've got Nebraska, you've got Maryland. Northwestern baseball has just never really been, it's never, they had a few years back in like the 80s when they had players like Joe Girardi, sure. But I got more into the softball side of it, which was a lot more fun and exciting because they were a winning program. it's certainly like the energy and the passion the fans have for college baseball here in the South. It's unlike anything I've been around. So it is a lot of fun, especially at Dudy Noble, which, I mean, that ballpark is, I'd put it above probably every minor league ballpark out there, and it's, up there, maybe not capacity-wise, but like amenities-wise with even some major league parks. So it's a lot of fun.
Yes, sir. There's nothing like going to a series in Starkville. Of course, all three of our Division I teams in Mississippi seems to have a great fan base. Southern Miss sells out all their games, even though it's like 5,600 or 5,700. And State had a great weekend this weekend. Didn't they draw like 13,000 on Friday or Saturday or something like that? I mean,
yeah, I think it was in the 13,000 range on that Friday night game. Who knows what it would have been if the weather had cooperated on Saturday, because you had everybody coming over from the spring game, but unfortunately the skies opened up and we had quite the storm come through, so that necessitated the doubleheader yesterday. I know last year when they had Super Bulldog weekend and the series against Ole Miss, they were able to set the on-campus attendance record with more than 16,000. I don't think they would have quite done that this year, but maybe they would have come close. But still, yeah, it's definitely a good place to take in a game.
It sure is. I was just thinking, there's some Major League baseball teams that don't draw 13,000 to a game. I was watching a little bit of or just looking at attendance figures yesterday for some of the Major League teams. Kansas City drew 17,000 yesterday. And, of course, I don't know, Oakland didn't play at home, but I don't know if they've drawn 13 all year. Unfortunately for them, they're in a bad situation. But it just shows something about the love and passion of the Mississippi sports fans. They really, they just love their college teams. I mean, that's just the way it is. But anyway, all right, let's go over to round ball. How'd you think the basketball ended this year for the men Bulldogs?
Yeah, I mean, a disappointing finish for sure. It was just up and down the whole way. I thought they sort of had the edge in that matchup in the first round against Michigan State, but sometimes postseason pedigree plays a big role, and certainly Michigan State has that more than just about anyone. They've been in the tournament, I think it's 26 years in a row at this point. And they just got outplayed from the start in that game. They've had to replace now at least one of their assistant coaches with James Miller going over to Oklahoma State. They've added a couple guys in the transfer portal. They've got three so far, on board with Kanye Clary, guard coming over from Penn State, Michael Nwoko, big man from Miami, and then they just got Claudel Harris, a guard from Boston College. And they do have a lot to replace, though. I mean, certainly getting Josh Hubbard back was huge. Getting Cameron Matthews back was huge. But, Tolu Smith, DJ Jeffries, they're going to be gone. Same with Deshaun Davis. You've got Shaq Moore in the transfer portal right now. So it's going to be a different group. But, I think that's what Chris Jans just knows and expects at this point, even though it's only been 2 years for him. He's talked about not wanting to build a program, but building a separate team for each year that isn't necessarily going to look the same. So he understands that's just how the game is played these days with the NIL and the portal era here in college sports right now.
How good a player can Josh Hubbard be before he leaves State?
Yeah, he seems like he's got a ton of potential, and he's already a budding superstar right now in year one. Obviously, in terms of his professional prospects, teams might be turned off by the size. He's only 5'10", but certainly, like the elevation, he gets way up in the air when he shoots those 3-pointers. He's been very diligent as far as I've heard about working out and getting after it. He took over sort of as one of the leaders on the floor in the back half of that season. He had a number of 20-plus point games in a row, including a few in which he scored over 30 late in the season. If his shots aren't falling, eventually it will, and he knows when teams are keying on him and is able to, give the ball up as well. I don't know if he's ever going to be a true point guard. I think that's part of why you bring in guys like Clary and Harris, but certainly the backcourt is shaping up to be a little bit stronger, and they'll have some help maybe in terms of shooting the ball from outside, which he didn't have a lot of last year. And obviously the year before he arrived, State was dead last in the country in three-point percentage, so they've been working to rectify that.
All right, listen, let's turn to women's sports for just a minute. First thing I want to mention on the air, Mississippi State's Lady Bulldogs golfers won the SEC championship. Is that correct? This past weekend?
They did, yeah. First time in program history. They won the SEC tournament out in Florida, and they've got a couple highly ranked amateurs. Julia Lopez Ramirez is definitely the star of that group. Can't say I've covered them a ton, but certainly exciting when you win an SEC championship, no matter what sport.
Oh, you got that right. All right. Okay, last question. Just tell us your recap of the women's basketball season, since they also.
It was a disappointment. Yeah, it's a disappointment. You can't shy away from that. They were playing for seeding. They seemed like they had an NCAA tournament spot locked up. They were tied for second in the conference. They were 7-3. They had that win against LSU in late January, and then the bottom just fell out. They didn't play defense very well at all. Collapsed against Florida. Collapsed against Kentucky. Collapsed against Ole Miss. Lost by double digits to Alabama and Auburn. Weren't able to win a game in the SEC tournament, and ended up having to settle for the new WBIT. And it was certainly an exciting moment last week. Jessica Carter getting selected in the second round of the WNBA draft by the New York Liberty. We'll see if they're able to find a roster spot for her. I know that's always tight with the WNBA. But they're losing a lot of talent as well besides her, with Lauren Park Lane, Aaron Barnum being out of eligibility, and you've got players like Miracle Shepard who are in the portal, as well as Darion Rogers, who came in last year from DePaul. They've added a few new players. They got one from Oklahoma State in the last few days. They also added Anaya Russell, a guard from Kentucky, who's real good on the defensive end. It's a work in progress, too, with Sam Purcell's team, because he had to replace a lot of his coaching staff, too. They had Michelle Clark-Hurd become the head coach at Mercer. Corey Irvin became the head coach at Chicago State. So they've added Anita Howard, who was the head coach at Georgia Southern, to the staff. They also added Fred Castro, formerly the head coach at Eastern Michigan. So they're building that up. And Gabe Lazo, who'd been promoted to associate head coach, less than a week later he leaves to join the new staff up at Tennessee. So a lot of turnover, a lot of churn. But Sam Purcell, hopefully he'll be able to figure it out and get a team going. They obviously will have Jerkayla Jordan coming back for her 5th year of eligibility. She'll be the leader of that team and really all facets. Certainly need a little bit more help inside, but plenty of time to get that figured out.
Benjamin, this is Marshall, and I told you, before we went on to start recording, you might not hear from me until we were out of time, and guess what? We're out of time. Outstanding job, my friend. You really got us up to speed on Mississippi State, and we appreciate you, and we welcome you. Maybe late, but we welcome you to Mississippi, and we welcome you to Wayne County via WJBO Radio. I'm going to ask you to hold on for just a second, if you would, Benjamin. But Dale and I are going to take a break to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be back after this break with tonight's final segment. See you after the break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back to the final segment of tonight's Brouhaha. Man, we really enjoyed Benjamin and Dale and I were talking at the break. Man, that guy, man, he knows Mississippi State and what's going on up there. It doesn't matter what the sport is. Man, he knows the players by name. He doesn't mind telling you who they are either. Outstanding job. Dale, a couple of highlights here. One of my guys, I don't know if he was a childhood hero or not. I wouldn't have classified him as that, but Roman Gabriel, the quarterback that I remember from Los Angeles Rams, passed away. And, these old great ones, man, I was always attracted to him as a young guy. I said, Roman Gabriel, man, what an awesome name. Is that a great name for a football player or what?
Yeah, he had the suntan and, he lived in L.A.
Yeah.
But, I've read some old papers. Now, I wasn't there at the time, but Southern Miss hosted Roman Gabriel in North Carolina State one year down at when it was called Mississippi Southern College.
Yeah. Okay.
Before they changed their name.
I'm glad you threw that North Carolina State out there because that's where he went to college. He went from one coast to the other, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure did.
I wanted to kind of mention, a lot of people talking about Caitlin Clark. Well, how, what impact she's had and what her deal in the draft was going to be and how much is she going to make. But it looks like she's gotten her about a $28 million deal with Nike for her own tennis shoe. Oh, basketball shoes, excuse me, not tennis shoes. We call them all tennis shoes, but tennis players wear tennis shoes. Basketball players wear basketball shoes. Dale, in case you didn't know that. But Caitlin Clark's got her very own shoe worth about $28 million to her. Not a bad deal.
Is that like my old Converse?
Yeah. Man, I couldn't wait till I got, my brother Jimmy had those high-top Converse all-star players down there when he played basketball with Slim Hardy down there at State Line High School, man, and I wanted to grow up where I could get me a pair of those Converse All-Stars. I want to close out here, talk a little bit about Calipari going to Arkansas. I heard an article. Now, when you can hear an article, Dale, you're pulling off a pretty good trick.
You can in this day and time, but all you got to do is put it on voice and it'll go.
And this guy had an interesting twist on, I don't know, as you can hear it on the internet, you can hear anything on the internet, but he was talking about, Calipari going to Arkansas is going to be trouble for a lot of people. One is, they said, because of the way he can recruit. And we know he can recruit. That's why Kentucky got him. He recruited well before he got there. And he recruited outstanding at Kentucky. This guy was talking about he's going to get $40 million over so many years, but they're going to give him an extra $5 million for NIL. They said this country doesn't understand what's fixing to happen with basketball at Arkansas. I'll get your twist on this. $5 million in NIL money for Calipari, who recruited well without it, and they got alumni, a couple of their alumni, 3 of them actually, they mentioned. Jerry Jones, probably owns the most valuable franchise in sports, the Dallas Cowboys. He's an alumni, Arkansas. The Waltons, you ever been to Walmart or Sam's Club? And then how about John Tyson, who is paying his salary, they say? Tyson Foods. Now, we Sanderson Farms and Marjack kind of folks down here and all that kind of stuff. And Tyson is a big chicken business, buddy, and it's in Arkansas. Mm-hmm. And their guy that owns, John Tyson himself, is involved with this. So there's a great possibility there's going to be a lot of money flowing out of Arkansas to get basketball players like they've never gotten before. What do you think about that?
Well, I think, too, his first hire was Kenny Payne from Walmart.
Oh, yeah.
Kenny's the basketball coach at Louisville last year, and he was replaced. And Kenny was a great recruiter. He was for 10 years with Coach Cal in Kentucky. Yeah. And he was the one that discovered Anthony Davis, who plays with the Lakers now. Yeah. They call him AD, I think. AD. Well, he was a 6'3" guard when Kenny discovered him. Turned out to end up 6'10". And in a year.
He grew a little growth spurt, didn't he?
Kenny liked him when he was 6'3", So, but Kenny's is a great front court coach, as far as rebounding, blocking out, technique. And he's a heck of a recruiter too. But I think it's going to be good. I heard some Dallas Cowboy fans were upset about, hey, why are you spending money over there? Why don't you spend it on the Cowboys and get some players?
That's and a good point.
You went you talk about Caitlin Clark. I also heard or read or heard what it was on the internet.
We claim responsibility for nothing we say.
Okay. Caitlin has sold more jerseys in the past month than the Cowboys sold all last year.
I read that article.
Did you read it?
Yeah, I did. So I got independent verification that you backing you up. That's the truth. At least that's what the internet said. Got to be true.
Yeah.
Dale, I hate to say it, but we're about out of time. Dale and I want to thank our sponsors.
Let's keep going, man.
No,
Let's put a marathon.
We appreciate y'all joining us this week. We appreciate our guests being with us. Outstanding job. Want to know that you can follow us during the week on Facebook at the Brouhaha, and you got all of our shows archived where you can listen to them on demand at our YouTube channel, the Brouhaha. But now it's time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
And Dale and I'll see you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Get us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.